Until almost 8 o'clock today, there was no power at the parsonage or here at church. But it came on just in time, so here we are. I put a picture of the PGD trucks that were just outside the parsonage, and my son wrote back, well, you could have a candlelight service. I do not know where that boy gets his sense of humor from. So today's scripture, has anyone ever heard a sermon on the Holy Innocents, on this scripture passage before? You know, I don't think I've ever done one on this passage. Any reasons you can think of why I might not have done a sermon on this passage? Because it's difficult? That wouldn't stop me. In fact, I like those. Well, there's several reasons. One is that the place this scripture passage comes in the lectionary is the Sunday after Christmas. Okay? Now, on Sunday after Christmas, I usually do something like the 12 Days of Christmas or the ABCs of Christmas, or a couple of times we did Happy Birthday Jesus. And so this doesn't really go with that. Right, so that's one of the reasons. The second reason is it's really out of place. It's out of order. As it starts out, as Wayne read it this morning, it said, after the Magi had gone. Well, the Magi haven't even gotten there until January 6th. So, you know, how could they go before they got there? It's just out of order. I don't know why they put it in the lectionary. I wouldn't have, but that's how it is. So that's another reason. Another is there are no outside historical records of Israeli children being killed during that time. There's no mention. And one would think that it would have been picked up by someone. You can do what you want with that, but that's just part of it. Another thing is, what does one do with children who are killed? Right after Christmas, too. Enjoy your presents. No, it's just doesn't fit. So none of this has allowed me to preach on this passage. So I want to take a look at this passage for a bit. You recognize there are three stories here. And it's all kind of telescoped together. But it might have been a number of years from beginning to end. But it's all kind of telescoped together. Matthew's trying to make a point. And it all fits together. Now, in the lectionary, each year we look at a different gospel. This year we're looking at Matthew. Last year we spent a lot of time in Luke, an occasional visit by John. This year we're going to be looking at Matthew. So some of this stuff is important not just for understanding this scripture, but as we begin to look through the Gospel of Matthew in this coming year. Now, Matthew is the most Jewish of all the Gospels. It's the most Jewish. His audience are Jews. His aim is to convince the Jews that this Jesus is the new movement of God. This the fulfillment of Scriptures in the Old Testament. It is the work of God that is new in Jesus. Now, more than any other gospel, Matthew uses images and uses scripture of the Hebrew Scriptures because that's the audience and what they would understand. And because his audience understood the images and understood and knew the Scriptures, the Hebrew Scriptures well, he didn't have to go out of his way to say, now, I want you to understand that when I talk about Jesus here, it's a reflection of Moses, because they already knew the stories. They would have got it. He didn't have to repeat those. So in these three stories, Matthew's intention over everything else is to demonstrate Scripture's fulfilled. How many times did we hear in Wayne's reading, Scripture is fulfilled? How many times did we hear? Three. There are three stories, and we heard for each one. This is to fulfill Scripture. The audience would have recognized immediately the references to Moses, to the Exodus, and even to Joseph, the first Joseph. When we hear the story, we are reminded of the birth story of Jesus. Because angels come in a dream. That's Matthew's story. We talked about that early in Advent. And that Joseph was obedient. That's what the Gospel of Matthew focuses on. And so, just like in that announcement story where God said, Mary is going to have my baby and you need to take him as your own. And he said, okay, he obeyed. We have that come back and play again. Twice, actually. We heard that today. In Matthew's birth story, we heard about the dream of Joseph being obedient. That same formula happens 2 times in the scripture readings we heard this morning. Those 2 times surround Herod's deadly search. In verse 13, the angel came in a dream to Joseph and said, get up, you're in danger. Take Mary and Jesus, go to Egypt. And Joseph obeyed. Same formula. Then in verse 20, an angel of the Lord came in a dream to Joseph and said, get up and go back. Take them back. And in verse 21, Joseph obeyed. That formula is set up. Now, even more important for Matthew is his insistence on the fulfillment of Scripture. You will hear that over and over again all year long. As Matthew looks at the life of Jesus, Matthew says to his Jewish audience, this life of Jesus is in fulfillment of the Gospels. This is the Messiah. So we'll hear that. So let's take a look at this scripture and see how these 3 stories speak of Jesus as the fulfillment of prophecy. The first one, though he doesn't say Hosea 11, he says, and he quotes the scripture, out of Egypt I have called my son. So this scripture tells us how Jesus got to Egypt in the first place. One wouldn't have thought. It also ties in with Joseph and his family who went to Egypt in difficult circumstances. It's a reference that his readers would not have missed. And it put him, Jesus, in the place of being able to be the second Exodus. Now, there are 2 foundational stories for Hebrews, for the Jews. One is creation, and the second is the Exodus. God taking them out and rescuing them. And so now Jesus is in the place to be the new Moses. The middle story connects Jesus with Moses. Herod's actions in wanting to kill the babies are reminiscent of Pharaoh's wanting to kill all the Israelite baby boys. They would have got that. They would have understood. Jesus, like Moses, was saved, rescued by God. This is no ordinary person. That's Matthew's story. Now, whether or not children were actually killed, there's no doubt that Herod would have searched for Jesus, and if he found him, he would have killed him. There's no doubt about that. That's the kind of person Herod was. In fact, Herod killed many of his own family because he was so paranoid about them maybe plotting against him. Augustus observed, it is better to be Herod's pig than to be his son. That is, you are safer as one of his food animals than you would have been as his son. He was cruel, he was paranoid, and Jesus was in danger. Third, in the third story, Jesus is again tied to Moses as they are told, those seeking you are dead and you can go home. It's safe now. That was the message to Moses as he was called back to his people. That's the message to Joseph as he heard that they needed to go back. Matthew connects this second Exodus in the context of the Exodus of Moses. Both returned to the land of Israel. Now, Ken's not here. Ken liked this part, and I do too, but you may or may not. When Matthew uses the phrase land of Israel, he uses it twice in this section. And this is the only time in the New Testament anywhere that land of Israel is used as a destination. That's where Moses went. He went back to the land of Israel. And it's not a mistake that that's the words that Matthew uses here. So, is this interesting or tedious? Which is it? We should take a vote here. I think it's interesting, but I understand it may be tedious. But I think these are some of the things that we need to know in order to understand this passage from today's scripture. And it also helps us to understand what we're going to be hearing in the Gospel of Matthew. Now, all of this, I think, helps us to understand. But I think there are 3 points that we might be able to take away from these 3 stories. There may be more, and there probably are. But there are 3 that I can think of. First, this is important. There's a shadow side to Christmas. There's a shadow side to Christmas. There's a danger in Christmas. Now, I think this is where culture misses Christmas. This is where they don't get it. They miss the point. At this point. And we get so worked up sometimes about, our culture is so materialistic and they're buying all this stuff and they're in my way when I want to get in line and buy my Christmas presents. But I don't think they really missed it at that point. I mean, the wise men brought extravagant gifts. Maybe they get that part. The part they miss is the shadow side of Christmas. Jesus came because of the shadow. Out of darkness comes a light, we hear. Jesus came in dark times. Jesus continues to enter our life and our world in dark times. That's what hope's about. That's the real message of Christmas. It's not, look at that cute baby. But it is that God's light came into a dark world. Now, Wednesday night we were looking at Genesis. And on the DVD there was a panel of 6 or 8 or so. And mostly theologians, a couple rabbis, a couple pastors, and an artist. And at the end the discussion was, what was that artist doing there? Talking about Genesis. And so we talked about that a bit, and I made the point that most good theologians and good preachers see themselves as artists. That's what we do. We paint a picture so that you can enter into it. It's a creative process. Now, it may not have seemed like it from the first part of this sermon, but in most sermons. Most artists get that. There are some artists who have painted the Nativity, that beautiful scene, but they get it, and in the background they've painted sort of an outline of a cross, knowing that even in that birth story, in Christmas, there's a shadow side. There's more to it. Dr. Karen Tucker tells about the Christmas pageant at her church, just like all such children's pageants. The Magi appeared in long robes with great colored and wrapped presents. The shepherds were in their bathrobes. She said, yet the highlight occurred when Mary unwrapped the baby in swaddling clothes, only to discover that it wasn't a cute little doll, but it was a cross. And she lifted it up over the manger. That's Matthew's story for us, to remind us that Jesus comes not in cuteness, but in reaction to darkness, in the cure for darkness, if you will. That's Matthew's story. That's one thing we need to understand, and this story helps us. Second, Matthew is saying that evil seeks to overcome good. Do you know that? Is that new to you? Probably not. But it needs to be reinforced. Evil seeks to overcome good, yet God has a strategy for overcoming evil with good. That's what the story's about. As much as it may seem like everything is dark, God has a plan, has an idea, has a Christ. We read in John 1:5, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. That's what Matthew's saying. Jesus is the light that overcomes it. That's what he's saying. Thirdly, Jesus is the new covenant. The new covenant written on the heart. God's new way. A covenant not of rules and order, but a covenant of love. A covenant of love. Not a covenant of privilege, but a covenant of service. John 13. A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you. That's what Jesus is saying. That's what Matthew is pointing to. A new light. A light in the darkness. In the darkness of our world, a light of hope. In the darkness of the struggles of our daily life, a light. In the everyday little darknesses that come our way, a light. A light of hope. A light of love. Let us remember, God is a God who loves us, who gave of himself, even in the darkest times, so that we might have life, we might have light,